All right, so good morning and welcome to the English 11 Writing Lab for the last Meow. And if you have not yet reached 1.5.1 in the module, you will want to do that by creating a Google Doc that says Writing Lab on it, and then you can just submit that for every assignment that leads up to 1.5.1. If it's a discussion board, you can go ahead and write Writing Lab there as well. But remember, you are still responsible for completing the assignments up to 1.5.1. We just want to make sure that the first draft is one of those assignments that if it is turned in late, you will get a 15% deduction. And that will also happen with the peer review because Canvas assigns everybody their essay to another person for the peer review. This is how I measure the listening and speaking standards. It's kind of in a weird way, I know, but it's teaching you a really important skill in terms of how to look critically at things, especially in writing, and how you can identify things that can help somebody else raise their grade. You don't want to just say, oh, this was the best paper I've ever read. That's not what the person needs to hear. The person needs to hear, you want to make sure that you have the author and the title of the article in the first line or something like that. You're helping them to reach the higher standard. So just make sure that you get the essay turned in on time. Okay. Alrighty. So right now, I think you and Miriam, are just going to have a conversation until we get some other people who pop in. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's fine.
All right. So here's the writing task. After reading the passage below, explain Bilger's argument and discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with his analysis. Support your position by providing reasons and examples from your experience, observations, or reading. Americans now spend $19 billion a year on veterinary care for their pets, up from $11 billion just 7 years ago. Add that to the cost of pet food and other supplies, and the number rises to $47 billion, nearly 3 times as much as the federal government spends on welfare grants. Poodles get root canals, cats undergo chemotherapy, rabbits are treated with radiation, and prairie dogs get oxygen therapy in intensive care units. People spend enormous amounts to pay for special diets for their pets, while cities create parks for off-leash puppy playdates. For a price, we can take our dogs for daycare or psychotherapy and buy them $200 cashmere sweaters and leopard skin beds. Clearly, our love affair with pets has gotten out of control. Now, Miriam, as I remember right, the whole passage in this context is not actually in the article.
No, it's not.
So what we've done here is we've kind of taken the elements of, he does present the information throughout the essay, but he never comes out and says the last sentence. Everything in Bilger's article, it's implicit, which means you actually cannot find that idea right there. But there are signs that he does believe that. If you take a look at the article, what would be some sentences or phrases that he uses, or how do you think he says this without actually saying it? What are some of the clues that lead up to that?
Well, okay.
I'll start. I think the one that really gets to me is the way he portrays the leverings. There's something kind of judgmental about that. Would you agree, Miriam, or did you see that?
I would agree.
Yeah, because he especially the way he describes Sean, the way he's dressed and how he's lost, and he's uh, it's I mean, he's not cruel in any way. The way he describes him is just kind of like, this guy's lost. And I don't think he means that. I think he means that both figuratively and literally. It is a big place. It is hard to find your way around. But I think he also means this in a figurative sense, in that, you're into territory here you shouldn't be into with spending this kind of money on a pet. Do you see any other examples, Miriam, of how he kind of, his snarkiness?
Well, okay, so on the 4th paragraph on part 1, it says, now that American vegetarian. Oh my god.
Okay, I'm trying to find where you are here on paragraph 4, right?
Paragraph 4, line 5.
Okay.
Now that
okay.
American
Veterinary Medical Association
has more than 7,000 specialties in 39 fields, including cardiology, radiology, and
ophthalmology.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of trying to say that, like, now look what they're doing. They're adding more.
Yeah. Now, this by itself, the presentation in and of itself, is true. They do offer all of the 39 specialties in them. And then I think also it's now saying the $250,000 kidney unit. That's one unit of this place, just one, and there's 39 of these fields. So I think he is implying that we do some math here, because we're talking about some serious dollars here paying for this facility. So yeah, that's definitely one of the clues that he's kind of judging it, right?
Yeah, he's saying, how could you spend this much, millions of dollars on all of this just for your pets? That's right. What I feel like I'm going to say.
So if we go to part 8, paragraph 48, and this is where you get it, the actual money. And looking at this paragraph, can you kind of see where he's judging in this paragraph?
Yeah.
Where is he doing that?
Where he says, add to the cost of pet food and other supplies, and the number rises from 47 billion, nearly 3 times as much as the federal government spends on welfare grants.
And why is that kind of an unfair comparison?
Because it's like you're spending more on animals than on people.
Right. Now, would you say that's a legitimate argument?
Yeah.
You would?
Yeah, because, it kind of makes sense. Like $19 billion plus, obviously, the food for the pets and all of the supplies. Yeah, I think
okay, because I don't think so. I think it's an unfair one, because what it does is I think what Bilger is doing is he's trying to point out the difference between animal and human. But why do people spend all this money?
Because they feel emotions towards them. They feel like they want.
Right. For the people who have these pets, the pets are members of the family. Would you deny members of your family food, the things that they need, clothing? Okay, so I'll agree that I think dogs and cats should not be dressed up to look like idiots. They have fur coats already. Okay, if it gets a little cold and they need a sweater or something, that's one thing. But you've seen, if you go into a pet store and one of the first things you see are all these cute little outfits that you can get your pet to wear. And while I agree with Bilger on some points of that, I think that we need to treat animals as animals, but he has brought out the fact that people do replace family members with these pets. Did you pick
like Kern?
Yeah. And so I think that's why I don't think he kind of treats this fairly, and I wouldn't find that comparison in 48 is very fair. Um, Cure the addiction to dogs and cats, and millions of families might be lifted out of poverty. And now we've seen a lot of homeless around Bakersfield. They seem to be kind of expanding their number and where they are. Have you noticed that a lot of these homeless people have dogs with them?
Yes.
Yeah, they're companions. They're friends. They're people who are, who they need. So to me, I think that Bilger's very unfair in this paragraph 48. Okay, so anything else that you noticed, Maram, about what Bilger does or says in this article that just kind of that
Oh, the little quote at the bottom of that paragraph. They're
uh,
more than the natural burden of human love.
okay. What does that quote mean to you?
To me, it means that,
I think.
like, they naturally, grow on people. They naturally attract people, pets. They
Mm-hmm.
do that. But like the human love is like too much towards them. Like we're giving too much.
Right. In a sense, I agree, and I don't know if you've ever seen The Dog Whisperer. Have you ever seen an episode of that program?
No.
The Dog Whisperer, his name's Caesar Milan, and he helps people whose dogs are kind of out of control. And he has shown that the number one problem of people who can't control their dogs are the fact that they treat them too much like humans. But dogs are always going to be animals. And so a dog is part of your pack, but they still see it as a pack. They don't see it as, a family. And so they have they when they look at you with those guilt eyes, those ASPCA eyes, that doesn't mean that they're feeling any particular kind of guilt or anything. It just means,
So
oops,
I repeat that.
yeah, I did the wrong thing, and so I don't want to do the wrong thing again, so I'm going to kind of lower my head and submit. If somebody's, oh, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that, that's not what they look for in a pack leader. They look for this calm assertiveness. And so a lot of problems that people have can be related to the fact that they do put the burden of human love on animals that really are they're made to be companions, but they're not made to be humans. And so I think it's a good quote, and I think that has a lot to do with especially what the Leverings are going through. However, I think it's unfair to compare that to, um, we really need to give this money instead to the homeless, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're going to do with the essay is there's 3 steps. So 3 things that you need to do here. One is to explain Bilger's argument. Then you can agree or disagree, and then you support your position using reasons and examples. So we're going to go through this step by step, starting with Bilger's argument. So, and remember, what is quoted here is kind of it's been brought together. This prompt has actually taken pieces of what Bilger says, and then they add that part on the bottom, which he never really states. So, what is his argument? Can you condense that down into one sentence?
I think I can.
Go ahead.
Okay. The argument is: should we be spending as much money on pets as we do today?
Okay, remember that an argument is not going to be in the form of a question. So turn what you just said into a statement.
Okay. Animals should wait. Animals should not be People should not spend as much money on animals as they do today.
Very good. Yes, that's a way of putting it. Um, and notice how you went from the uh, animals to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another grammar thing, right? Altogether, that's the active part of this, is that he doesn't want the Americans to be spending all this amount of money because, well, and is there any kind of what's the hint here? Why should not we not spend this money on animals?
The hint would be. Wait, could you ask the question again?
How? Okay, I'll start the statement. You finish it.
Okay.
Bilger does not want Americans spending this kind of money on animals
Because there are other supplies and necessities that people need to
very good,
focus on.
very good. That's it. That's his argument, and so um, you would need to state that, and it can be done in as simple as a sentence, because what you're going to do next is you're going to agree or disagree. So, what do you think, Miriam?
Do I agree that pets should have that much? I I agree and disagree. I don't.
And that's fine.
Okay, could we do that?
Yes, you can, because if you look back at the prompt, let me go back to the prompt. Discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with the analysis. So that the extent to which means that what you have to do is you have to, basically state what you agree with, what you don't agree with. So let's go from there. What part do
Okay.
you agree with?
Well, I agree with the part that we should not just turn the other side on pets and just leave them. I agree that we should feed them.
Mm-hmm.
Play with them, take care of them.
Right.
Like animals. But I
Good.
disagree because if they're at a point where they can no longer live or they're at a point where they just can't fight anymore, I don't think that people should be spending this much money on, you know, all these procedures and surgeries
Mm-hmm.
and everything if, you know, it's doing more harm than good.
Okay. Well stated. And that's your claim.
Yes.
So that's the part that you will be supporting throughout this. So, and I would think that the organization sets itself up in that you can write what you agree with and then what you disagree with. Although I think the way we did it, you disagreed because of the fact that they are part of our family and there are certain things that they need that and they provide us back with the love and the loyalty. So obviously, yes, we need to feed them, we need to get them their medical care, we need to get them licensed, and but we may be going too far if we're giving them massages
Yeah.
and yeah, okay.
And
uh,
yeah,
yeah,
daycares and stuff like that.
right. And that's always been my thing. If you're going to own a dog, why are you going to leave it at a daycare all day?
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem. Okay, so what examples does Bilger give that help us define his idea of too far?
Oh, okay. I feel like part 8,
Mm-hmm.
paragraph 50
Okay,
does is like a really good one, in my opinion, because
so
it talks about how animals were treated and how they are now.
mm-hmm. Okay, so you have the Chinese pampering their Pekingese while they stir fry other breeds. That definitely
I
is
know.
true.
When I read that, I was like,
Yeah. Okay. Now, and these are good examples, but remember, he's saying Americans.
Okay.
It's Americans that are doing this. Now he's kind of comparing them. They're no more inconstant than other, and that inconstant means they both love and adore, and then they also, you know,
Have
eat.
other flaws.
Right. So what is it that the Americans do that he feels is too far?
Okay, just give me 1 minute. Do I have to quote it?
Not necessarily, but because, okay, so this is the difference, and we will be talking about this in a little bit too, between paraphrasing and summarizing. So if you're summarizing, you're taking the whole content and you're boiling it down. But if you are picking out certain parts of it, you do have to kind of indicate where those parts are. So one of the most important things that people can do, you don't need whole sentences. And in fact, I just learned this yesterday at the workshop that I went to. You know how you use the three dots known as the ellipsis for,
Yes.
yeah, it,
To when you end a sentence in the middle
yeah,
or something like
turns
that.
out you no longer need them. If you are taking just the piece, um, you can, if it's still, unless the only time you would need it is if you're quoting a sentence and you take out a chunk of it, then you use the ellipsis in the middle. But at this point, if you are simply taking pieces of the sentence, you do not need to put the ellipsis either in front or after. So
That's good to know.
it's very good to know, because those kind of get annoying too when
Okay.
you're typing them. So even little words or phrases that kind of stick out. So what are you remembering?
Well, okay, I found something that he says in the
Uh
article on part 2,
huh.
paragraph 13. He
Okay.
says between 1980 and 2001 alone, the number of dogs and cats in the United States grew from 98 million to 130 million. 2 generations ago, fathers still gave their sons sacks of kittens to drown in the river. Today, according to a recent survey by the American Animal Hospital Association, 63% of pet owners say I love you to their pets every day. 83% refer to themselves as their pet's mom and dad.
Perfect. I'm glad you picked that one because it is rich with detail.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, are you going to quote the whole paragraph?
No.
You don't want to.
No.
Definitely not. So think about, when you read that paragraph, what were the phrases that drew you to it? Because you went through and you scanned, right?
Yep.
And so there was something that caught your eye that went, aha, that's the paragraph that information's in. What did you find? What was the first thing you saw?
Okay, first thing I saw was kittens drowned in the United States,
Okay,
and I love you.
very good. All right, so here's what you can
That's
do.
kind of a weird.
And they're both in the same paragraph, correct?
Yes.
All right. Those are those are the only ones that you really need right now because they have the greatest impact. There's a lot of people who are familiar with that, especially if they've read. I know it was in one of the Little House books, but there's lots of examples in literature where we know that back in the day when a cat had a litter and they didn't want all those cats around, they just throw them in a burlap sack and throw them in a creek somewhere to drown them because they didn't want them to be, if there's too many of them, then things get out of control. So it was like, we need to get rid of them. They're like, rats and squirrels, and these cats are now acting the same way. So that's powerful. It's a powerful image, and it's the only one you really need. And then, that's kind of like the two ends, isn't it? You're saying at the beginning, um, you know, we have come from. Does he say how many years ago that was?
Yeah, he says between 1980 and 2001 alone. That's the only
Well,
year he
that's the
mentions.
only
Two
date, right?
generations.
Yeah, we're trying to find when. Okay, where's the part about the drowning the kittens?
2 generations ago,
Okay,
fathers
so
gave their sons.
a generation is considered to be 70 years. So like you could say about 100 years ago. So you could say that Bilger cites that, whereas less than 100 years ago we were drowning kittens if they were reproducing at a high rate, to now to the point where 63% of the pet owners say "I love you" to their pets every day. So in that sense, all you would need is to quote that pet owners say "I love you" to their pets every day. That's
Okay,
the
well,
only one that.
can I like summarize it?
Yeah. Well, and yes, because of the wording of it, it's a very common way to say it. But are you changing any of the word order? Are you changing any of that part? How would your sentence read? Do you know?
It would say less than 100 years ago, many people in the United States um, used to,
Drown kittens in a
yeah,
sack.
or I would like use other words like less than 100 years ago, many people in the US used to kill off unwanted animals, but
by
today,
by drowning them in the river. This is a weird part. It's
yeah,
it's the drowning in the river part that very visual, because you
yeah,
can hear it, you can see it, you can probably even smell it. Who knows? But yeah, that's the important part. So they kill off unwanted animals by drowning them in rivers. Continue.
but and but today people usually end the day by saying they love their pets,
Yes,
something like that.
yeah. So that would be a summary. And what you would do then in that case, because you still need to cite it,
Yeah, I would
is
say
you just need paragraphs um,
13.
13, just paragraph 13, right? And that's a great paraphrase. And what you've done there is you've paraphrased that one because it's not the whole content of that. A summary would be more like,
Changing the whole thing.
it'd be
Condensing it.
condensing it down. So as he describes this medical center, this huge medical center, there's pieces throughout it where there's the paragraph 9 where he's describing what's in it and just kind of the physical. I thought there was different places where he added more information about that hospital, but I may have been mistaken.
Yeah, I think there is a part.
Yeah. I know that Lady's story would be summarized because Lady's story takes place throughout the article.
Yeah.
And so if
The
you're
lady got sick, then she went
right,
to the hospital, then she got a surgery, then she's
yeah. And in that sense, you're saying what the whole article is about. So you really only need to say, Bill Burkhard Bilger's The Last Meow tells us the story of blah blah blah. That's all the citation it needs. You don't even need to put any parentheses in there because you've basically summed up the whole article, but you've also put in the title and the name of the author. So that's all that you really need when it comes to that. Okay, so and we're going to look more in depth to that because this is actually, yes, it's interesting to talk about how Americans have an obsession with pets, but our real objective here is to make sure that people know how to properly use the 3 types of evidence: your summary, your paraphrase, and your quote. It also, one of the things too is, how do you pick the quotes that you want to use? So I've picked some here. You remember this quote? This was from Jordy Druckler, that is quoted in Bilger as saying, "The more people spend on their pets, the more that cost is going to be reflected in the law." Jordy Druckler, the retriever owner's lawyer, says.
yeah.
Okay, do you remember where this occurs in the article without having to look? I heard that page. Without having to look, do you remember when or what was happening when this quote comes up?
Um, I know it's probably like part 7, maybe 6 or 7.
What's happening in part 7?
Um, about the dog
Whose name is?
whose name is.
Down, now you can look. Because you got to get that part right.
Yeah, I know it's talking about how he got shot by 2 arrows by another man, and he's trying to get money.
Mm-hmm.
He's getting sued
Because, and what's the
because he loves his pet.
yeah, because he was part of the family too. So what you're doing then, well, okay, now that we know basically what the content is, so what's this quote really saying? What's the point behind this quote?
This quote is saying that the more that we get involved, no, the more that we get attached to animals, the more money that we'll have to spend on other.
Mm, the now we're gonna need to find it because
Okay,
I
yeah,
think
I'm looking for
right
it.
because if you're not quite sure, you got to go back and look. So let's see here. Um, I just know somebody's listening on the recordings, shouting at the computer. It's paragraphs. It's paragraph.
Yeah.
Um, oh dear. Maybe I should have looked this up before.
Yeah, I swear I knew where it was.
I was putting these together and didn't even bother to. This is why it's so important to cite your sources. Let this be a lesson to you, students. Where the bladders? I feel like it's around Tiberia. It's like near
Yeah,
Tiberia's
I'm
case,
right
but
over here.
yeah, but I'm not. The other thing, oh, I think I saw it. Yep, here we go. Um, 34. Let's back up to 34 because 35 is where the quote starts. Brock, who was the owner of the dog that got shot, eventually settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, but Duckler expects a number of similar cases in coming years. Wait, we better go up a paragraph. The law has long treated pets as property, no different from a teddy bear or a wind-up toy. If an owner sues for a wrongful death of his cat, the most he can demand is the cost of replacing the animal. Recently, though, lawyers have begun to demand more. 2 years ago in Oregon, a retired football player named Stan Brock filed a lawsuit against a man who had shot his 2 Labrador retrievers with arrows. The man claimed that the dogs had been threatening stray cats near his house. Replacing the dogs would have cost at most a few $100s, but Brock sued for $300,000. Pets don't depreciate, they appreciate. This attorney Jordy Duckler argued in court. That's very different from what you can say about a purse or a car. And the trial judge agreed.
Okay.
What information are we learning about there?
Oh, we're learning that over time, unlike a car or a or a toy, pets don't. They don't. How do I say this?
What does depreciate mean?
Like unvalue over time,
Right. They
lose
become worth
value.
less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pets don't like lose value over time. They
Gain it.
gain. They
Yeah.
gain it. While toys and stuff like that, they usually lose value.
Right.
Some of them.
So what point is being supported here? First of all, is
The law has treated.
yeah, the law has changed it. So is Bilger using this as support for or counter argument?
This would be a count. No, this would be 4 because it's saying how
For what?
No, actually, this would be, wait, a
We're
counter
talking.
argument.
It is a counter argument. It's a counter
Yeah.
argument that he's bringing up, talking about how, and this is sort of supporting the too far. He's saying it's gotten to the point where now it's considered as part of the law in that pets have this tremendous value. So this you can view it either way as support for his claim that it's getting out of hand, or as the counter argument in that, here's why it has become part of the law that it's possible to value pets that increase in value rather than decrease in value over the time that you have them. So that's why you would want to use that quote. What about this one? Do you remember who said this one? I don't know. If it was up to me, I might not go through with it.
This is Sean
This is Sean,
talking
right?
about Karen.
Now, I asked this question for a very important reason, because some people will stick that quote in there and they won't say it's Sean. So if this is the first time you use it, what do you need to do with this quote if you're going to use it in your essay?
You'll say Sean in well, you would first say, you can say in paragraph, whichever one it was on, Sean states, parentheses, right?
Yep, but you still need the lead in too. What is he responding to? What's the information he's responding to here?
He's just saying that if it was up to him, he wouldn't go through with the surgery because of his other expenses and issues, but because Karen is attached to the cat and had the surgeries, he'll do it for her.
Right. That's so. Let's figure out first if what we would use this quote for. What is the quote demonstrating when you're considering Bilger's argument?
It's showing that, well, it would be an agreement to the argument because he's saying that even though he has all, he's recovering from surgery and all that, Karen still sees, like, the cat has grown Karen and is helping her with her
Right.
issues, like with
Right.
her.
And that is what needs to go into the paper. So you would give a lead in that explains. We can see that Sean is struggling with the decision whether to go through with the surgery or not, comma, but when he says, then I don't know if it was up to me, blah, 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 blah. Do you want to use the whole quote?
No.
So which part would you want to use, or would you paraphrase it?
Well, if I was to use a part, it would say, if it was up to me, I might go through with it, and then I would skip that
Right.
middle part,
And
and then go to his
the
wife has been
the rest of it could be paraphrased from your own
Yeah.
point of view. Yeah, that she's just so attached to the cat in her own recovery that he doesn't want to give up on the cat yet. So good. These are the kinds of questions you want to ask yourself when you're looking at how do I support any claims. We have another one here. The AMC occupies an 8-story concrete tower at the corner of 62nd Street and York Avenue, overlooking the East River, and in an average year admits 65,000 patients. The center has its own oncology, dentistry, and dermatology departments, as well as the usual surgery, emergency, and recovery wards. Now, you did bring this up earlier, Miriam, about all of these different things that it uses. So let me ask you this. Would you use this as a quote?
No.
Probably not. Why wouldn't you use it as a quote?
I wouldn't use it because it just, it could be paraphrased or it can be.
Exactly.
than the other way.
Right. I think when you're looking at quotes, what you're doing is you're trying to show a person's attitude about something, because what they say or how they think, um, is part of the analysis. But this is just straightforward factual information. Um, and if you were to even if you decided you would paraphrase it, what does the description of the hospital do for the task you're needing to do?
I don't feel like it does anything. It just talks about how, well, actually, it would show that medical centers for animals are growing.
Hmm.
So it would be either way, it could be used.
Yeah, this is part of his definition of out of control or too far, going too far. Because to me, I'm reading this description and I'm thinking this may be the size of Memorial Hospital. If you see Memorial
Yeah.
Hospital, I'm thinking, can you imagine taking your dog to a vet and that's where you would go? That's huge. And for New York, especially. Now, of course, New York is a much more populous state, and you've probably got people all up and down the East Coast bringing animals into the MC. So, if you were trying to promote the fact that we have these huge facilities that are designed specifically for animals, um, then paraphrasing this would be fine. I especially like concrete tower. It's interesting that they would use the word tower, because what associations do you make with tower?
None.
You don't make any with
Oh, oh yeah, you do with like big companies, like something
right,
large
and
and
huge and towering over almost sounds like overpowering. So I think his word choice of tower is very interesting at this point. And for me, I could use this as if I'm analyzing what Bilger is saying, especially the part about how he's being critical of this without being too critical. This is one of the ways that he does it. Okay, so when you bring these quotes in, and we're going to talk about quotes, paraphrases, and summary, and how you do this properly in a paper, because this is really the focus of what I'm looking for. Now we're going to get really picking when it comes to the MLA citation, because as you move closer and closer to college, this is critical stuff. And so what I've done here, this is an example of how the quote would be used, how it would be kind of infused in there. Remember that the first time that you use a source, you've got to have these elements. So the red sentence is Burkhard Bilger in his New Yorker feature article, The Last Meow, then the date is there in MLA format, tells the story of Kern and Sean Levering, whose cat Lady is suffering from many illnesses. Okay, so look at the red part. What all are in that introduction?
it says the author's name.
Author's name, full author's name, right?
Yeah,
First
full
and
author's name.
uh-huh.
The place where the article was featured, the place where it was shown,
Well,
is
it's
where it
really
originated.
the publisher's name. The New Yorker is the
Oh,
name of a magazine, so you don't need where it was published, just the
okay,
name of the
okay.
publication. Yeah,
Well, okay, the name of the article and the date it was published.
right. What about feature article? What's that?
That means it was one of the top articles.
Basically it's the genre. So what this means is a feature article is one that's typically longer and it goes into depth on whatever the subject is. So feature article implies the length of this article. And especially with the New Yorker, they have some very long pieces in there. He did a lot of work on this. It's more like a report than just a short essay. So that's what you would also put in the genre. Is it a blog? Is it a magazine article? Is it a news story? That kind of thing. Okay. Now the part in black should also kind of be part of it because it's the full claim. No, it's not the claim. I'm sorry. It's just the content of it. Just here's what it's about. Remember that when you're writing an academic paper, you cannot assume that your reader has read the same piece you did, because the question we're asked is, do you agree with Bilger's argument? You're not asked to summarize the last meow, but you do have to give enough information from the last meow so that your reader knows, the basic content and context of what you're talking about. Okay, I've lead-ins. Now, specifically, the purpose of the lead-in is to give that background information for the reader who has not seen the article. Even if the reader reads the article, you want to kind of tell them, okay, remember when it was this part? This is what he said. So, lady is suffering from many illnesses. However, rather than euthanize the cat, they are attempting to save its life through medical procedures running into thousands of dollars. So I've given the context where I'm pulling the quote from first. When asked why they are going to such extreme measures, Bilger quotes Kern as saying, "I don't know what I would have done without the cats. The pain was so extreme that I would just go to the bathroom and cry. I meant to put go to the bathroom and cry." So what are you noticing about how this is written, Meow?
I've noticed that the author was quoted, and so was the person who
Right.
said the quote.
Mm-hmm. And we practice that in the module so that when you're using a quote that the author already quoted, you have to kind of build that layer there. And then you can put, so as long as you put in the content of where it is and what's happening in what she's responding to. So, it's not enough for Karen to just say, "I don't know what I would have done without the cats." You can put that in all kinds of contexts, but you want to really set up the environment in which this quote is given. So that's what I mean by a lead-in. And of course, the quote itself, notice I did put in the ellipse, and this is what we were talking about earlier, because I did take out the chunk, paragraph 21. There was some part that I took out. Let's see what I took out so we can figure out why I took it out. So it was Sean was working out long hours and the pain so extreme, sometimes I would just go into the bathroom and cry. So I didn't think that the Sean was working long hours was really necessary to it, and I don't want to make the quotes long. Okay. There used to be a rule that I would tell my students, try not to make your quote any longer than 10 words. And then they made it a challenge that they would make every quote 10 words, and that's not what I want to do. What you want to do is just find the meat of where the evidence lies. Okay. All right, so paraphrasing now. With the paraphrase, your lead-in kind of works together with the little pieces from the quote. So here's one example. Bilger describes the Animal Medical Center as a tremendous facility located in, notice the parts that I chose to quote, an 8-story concrete tower that treats more than 65,000 patients a year in a wide variety of specialties, including dentistry, oncology, and dermatology. So I explained earlier what I thought about the tower, but Miriam, can you guess why I put patients in quotes?
You put patients in quotes because humans are usually like people are described as patients, while animals,
animals are just animals. Right. Yeah. In fact, I don't even know if I've heard of it refer to the animal they're treating as a patient. Maybe they do. I don't know. I only take my pet to the vet, and I haven't heard her call Daisy a patient yet. But then again, she just calls her Daisy. So, okay, you still need to put the reference there. So that was summarized from paragraph 9. Okay. Now the summary, and we did talk about this earlier, it depends on how many paragraphs you're actually putting together. If it's more than 2, then you definitely would want to actually, if it's like the whole thing, or if you're talking 5, 6, 12 paragraphs, you would then want to use, instead of that paragraph 11 to 13, you would probably say Bilger's article explains. And then you don't, if you're saying it is the whole thing, you only need to make sure that the title is there, or his whole feature article. But with this summary, I've put 3 paragraphs together. Bilger explains how the field of veterinary medicine has evolved over the last 100 years, from moving from primarily the treatment of livestock and service animals to now serving domesticated pets, including more exotic animals such as pot-bellied pigs. And that's just combining the important information from 11 through 13. So, Miriam, are there any questions about the 3 types of evidence and how they're formatted in the essay?
No, I don't have any questions. It shows everything.
Okay. Now, once you put in the quote, you're not done yet. You still need to talk about how this relates to your claim to begin with. That, remember, from first semester, we call that a warrant. It's linking the evidence to your topic and to your claim. So I'm taking my summary, and I'm going to now infuse this into the paper and tell how it's related. So I've copied the Bilger explains how the field of veterinary medicine has evolved over the last 100 years, moving from primarily the treatment of livestock and service animals to now serving domesticated pets, including more exotic animals such as pot-bellied pigs. Why did I pick it? He demonstrates how the shift of society's mindset has moved from seeing animals as objects owned to family members. Then, why is this important to the claim? This blurs the line for many pet owners, as they can extend the life of their baby going into serious debt by approving costly medical procedures, when the more humane solution may be to just euthanize the animal. So notice that I've added 2 sentences, one that is kind of explaining why this quote is important, and then the next, how it links back to my claim. This is known as a chunk. So if in my feedback I say, can you add another chunk? This is what I'm talking about. So the evidence with all the descriptions. Okay. Now, you're still not done yet, because you need 2 of those chunks to go in the body paragraph. That's what we mean by sufficient evidence. You've provided sufficient evidence, so that's not just the evidence, but it's the analysis that goes with it. So we've taken that, what I just gave, that first chunk, and then I've added another chunk to it, starting down here with Bilger describes. Bilger and this was the one I had put in earlier. Bilger describes the Animal Medical Center as a tremendous facility located in an 8-story concrete tower that treats more than 65,000 patients a year in a wide variety of specialties, including dentistry, oncology, and dermatology. Now here comes the analysis. This begs the question why such a facility is necessary when it is not funded by a medical cash flow through medical insurance company building, already expensive for most people, but by the actual cash flow of hard-working middle-class families like the Leverings trying to save a stray cat that has become their surrogate child. The psychological damage to the pet owners is equal only to that of the suffering animal that does not understand all the procedures it must endure. So, talk to me about this academic paragraph, Miriam. What do you see as being the important elements of it?
I see the quotes are important, and the other thing is like explaining them too. So I feel like the whole thing.
Right. And notice how many quotes are actually in it.
2. Well, actually, One.
Yeah, well, not even. Not a full
A
sentence,
little
is it?
one.
Just tiny
No.
little, yeah. The only thing that's actually quoted is just the 8-story concrete tower and the patients. I haven't even used the quote, the actual sentence from Bilger yet. This is what's tricky about evidence, is that it's not as much as you think it is. I know that when a teacher says, make sure you have enough evidence, some students are inclined to go and find the biggest quote they can and stick it in there. But that's not what we mean. What we mean is you've got to have your ideas supported by pieces of the other one. And so, and I'll tell you too, this is why when I use turnitin.com, I'm not using it to play gotcha. I'm looking at this to see how much of this is you and how much of this is Bilger. And if I were to put this through, I mean, it would barely register on turnitin.com. So this would be a model body paragraph. It is written by, the AP student up the top of the, but I know everybody has the capability of doing this. It's piece by piece. How are you putting this argument together? That's what you're practicing with this. So in this, for the whole argument essay, of course, we all know about the introduction, which has the hook and the claim. Now, remember, Maram, what is your claim? Did I accidentally mute you? No. Are you there? Oh, okay. Okay, Miriam. I'm glad you're there. There you are. Okay.
Okay, so my claim is I agree and disagree with the fact that animals should have as much money spent on them as they do today.
Okay. Be sure that in that's a very good claim, but there's a little piece missing. What's the tiny little piece missing?
Um,
Who are you disagreeing and agreeing with?
oh, I agree and disagree with Bill. Wait, what's his name?
Burkhard Bilger.
Bill.
In his feature article, this is actually where you're going to put the whole title. So
Oh,
that
okay.
that one back, bum, 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 there we go. That this one, the red part,
Yeah.
that everybody should be putting that. That should somehow appear in their claim.
Okay.
It doesn't need to necessarily be in the hook. It can, but the claim should have that part up at the beginning. Once you put that, now you can go Bilger all the way. You don't need to put in, unless you're putting in, in the last meow, and now you're going to make a summary of the whole thing. But that red part should be part of your claim. Okay.
So I would say Burkhard Bilger in his New Yorker featured article, and then I would have the date, right?
Yeah.
On September 2003. Um,
Now the way you've set it
oh,
up,
yeah.
you're going to need to, at this point, it's what he states.
I would say
And
I
by
agree and disagree with Burkhard Bilgeri in his article
when
by
he
the
says,
when he says, um, I'm so confused. Wait.
down at the bottom. Oh, are you confused? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So clearly,
Okay.
our love
All
affair.
right. Now, we didn't, I mean, he doesn't actually say this in the article, but you've been given it in the prompt, so it's acceptable to use it.
Okay.
Down at the bottom of the prompt, clearly our love affair with our pets has gotten out of control. So Burkhard Bilger says in his article, The Last Meow, et cetera, that, and by the way, since he doesn't actually say this in the article, it doesn't need the quotes around it. You can consider this a paraphrase.
Okay.
Now you can have a new sentence that says, I somewhat agree and I somewhat disagree. And I know there are people out there who are going to say, I thought you couldn't use I in an essay. You can, because it's part of a pattern we call they say, I say. You're already saying somebody else said something. You're the author. You get to agree with them. So it makes sense that you would say, I agree. The one you can't use is you. When you get a dog, you need to treat it right. Don't put that in there.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So go back through this. Now, remember that there were 3 parts to it, to the prompt. So you had to describe, and you know what? This is wrong. Don't worry about a whole paragraph for builder's claim. You're
Okay.
going to be putting that in between. I'll probably change this slide before the afternoon session. But builder's claim is really reserved for the introduction. And then you're going to have 2 body paragraphs, the extent to which you agree or disagree, and your supporting evidence. And then how is your stance on how far you and others should go in? That's kind of like in the conclusion. So you basically already said it earlier when you were coming up with it, that they needed the basics, food and medical care, and maybe some basic toys, but they certainly don't need to go to massages or chiropractors or anything like that. So you already made that point, so that's actually going to go in the conclusion. So I don't like this slide. I'm going to change it, and everybody will have that change once I change it on the live document. So if you want to write this down just so that you know, your introduction has the hook, builder's claim, and then your claim. And then 2 body paragraphs supporting your extent to which you agree or disagree. And then the conclusion is how far you think people should go. Because that's gonna reflect back your extent to which you agree or disagree.
So we should have 5 paragraphs, right? Okay, 5
It'll
paragraphs.
probably be 4. It's going to work
Okay.
out to be 4. I will redo this slide, and then it will be in the presentation after we finish recording here. So just
Okay.
keep your eye out for that. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the due dates. The first draft will be due Wednesday, the 29th at 11:59 p.m. Because, as you know, Miriam, that's when Canvas in the next minute is going to send out the peer reviews. So they should be available Thursday morning because they're going to be made at midnight. For those of you listening, if your paper is not in by 11:59 on Wednesday and Canvas doesn't have it to send out as a peer review, you will have to peer review your own paper, and that does also result in a deduction of 15%. So please make sure that you submit that draft on time. And then the peer reviews for everybody will be due January 31st. So I know that some people will be waiting on, I want my peer review. When's my peer review due? But you have to give them time to do it. So we're giving them until Friday night. The new draft won't even actually be due until, it's not even due. So there's no point deductions on revisions ever, because you get as much time as you need to make the changes.
Okay.
Now, Miriam knows about this, but I do want to go through this real quickly because it's a new step for a lot of people. We have some new students with us. So what happens is you get assigned a peer review. And in this presentation, this is the same button link that you would use. Hey, why didn't you click the right? Oh, because I have to log in. That's why. This link takes you to a page that shows you how to find your peer review. So you've got a video here to watch to see how to find it, but basically these are the instructions. You're going to go back to 1.5.1, back, and you'll look under the submission status. So where you see success, you've successfully completed or submitted assignment, blah, blah, blah. Underneath that, on Thursday, you'll have a name, and you just click that name and it will bounce out. The next step is to open a new Canvas tab, so that, because you're going to go to 1.5.2, you want to have the two different tabs open, 1.5.1, 1.5.2, because 2 is the one that gives you the instructions of what to do. Then you're going to copy and paste the questions for the peer review into a Google Doc. Then go back to your partner's essay and answer the questions based on your peer's paper. When you are using that Google Doc, the first thing you want to do is click the share button, the blue share button on the Google Doc, and then get shareable link. It will automatically give everybody who's got the link permission to view the document. So that would be me and your partner. And then back in 1.6.1, when you see the essay, there's on the right side, is it the right side, Miriam, where you see that add comment box?
Yeah.
Okay. So you just paste, because this is already going to be on the clipboard. You paste it in assignment comments, and then you submit. And then go back to 1.6.2 and submit the document the normal way in Canvas. Okay. Now, if you turned it in late, you obviously don't have to go through those steps. Just turn in the document that is related to your own evaluation of your own paper. Okay. So, Miriam, do you have any questions about what you're going to need to do?
No, I don't have any questions.
Awesome. Well, I thank you for talking with me today, and I think we got a lot of good work done, which we always do when I talk with you. And I just want to let everybody know that Miriam regularly comes in to see me and talks about it. She's doing super well in the class, and one of my favorite students, obviously, because she sees me. So thank you, Miriam, for joining me, and good luck on this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.